Thank you. Senator Bennet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. I want to thank the ranking member for raising the issue of $9 eggs. I think that's a very, very important one. And Mr. Greer, thank you for being here, and I want to welcome your family as well for being here. They're a lot better dressed than my family would be if they were here. I wanted to ask you a question in your opening statement, and I have two questions, so please don't filibuster the answer to this one, because I know it would be actually easy to fill the time because I know you believe in it. At the very end, you wrote, I am convinced that we have a relatively short window of time to restructure the international trading system to better serve U.S. interests. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I will, and I'll try to be succinct.
Please, thank you.
To your point. We're in a position where for the past several decades, we have had a default trade policy that was an end unto itself, which was to liberalize United States trade policies in the hopes that other partners would do this. As we've discussed, that resulted in quite a bit of offshoring and concentrated losses in some of our industrial communities. Also gains for a lot of folks like in the ag community and other exporters. And then we had bodies like the World Trade Organization presumed to, exercise sovereignty or authority over our trade laws and limit our ability to do that. I think going forward, we need to restructure this. We need to have a pragmatic trade policy where we're looking, sometimes sector by sector, sometimes economy-wide, often on a bilateral basis. How can we have very competitive terms of trade between us and the rest of the world? How can we emphasize our areas of competitiveness, technology, agricultural, advanced manufacturing, and be able to take advantage of that in a very particular way, as opposed to just having a default trade policy of let's liberalize everything and see where the chips fall?
I think also that we had a good conversation when you came by the office, which I appreciated. And I think that you agree that we can't tariff our way to prosperity, that there are other policies that we need to pursue to drive American growth, to protect our national security, and that we need to approach domestic and international politics in a strategic way. Trade is part of that, but we have other business to conduct around the world and here also. For me, this includes supporting American manufacturing, pursuing trade policies at the same time that we're doing that we're serving the farmers and the ranchers that you grew up with and the workers throughout our state, and reducing our dependence on China, which I think is something that there's bipartisan support for here. I believe we can do that by investing in the Western Hemisphere, which has been ignored, I think, by administrations on both sides of the aisle. That's why Senator Cassidy and I are leading the Americas Act, which I mentioned when we were meeting in my office. This would bring critical supply chains back to our hemisphere, counter China's economic coercion of our neighbors, which is going on as we speak today in our own hemisphere, and create pathways to economic security that reduce illegal migration, I think, in the hemisphere. So in that context, I would ask you if you are aware of the Americas Act, if you're thinking about ways in which in our region we'd be able to extend existing agreements or work with Congress to deepen our cooperation and our integration with our neighbors. This is something that people at home readily understand when they are asking the question, how can a country of 330 million people compete with India with 1.4 billion people, compete effectively with China, which has 1.3 billion people? We obviously don't have those numbers. We've got a lot going for us: innovation, commitment to the rule of law, a lack of corruption, the most dynamic economy in the world. We've got some big problems: income inequality and a lack of economic mobility. I think working in a strategic way with our neighbors is one of the answers to that, and I wonder if you could give me your views on that.
Well, certainly. I have reviewed the Americas Act, and one thing of interest in the trade policy that was put out by the Trump administration a couple of weeks ago, it mentioned the need for USTR, it directed USTR to review our existing trade agreements to see if they can be improved in a way that improves the terms of trade for the United States. So I think there's room for a conversation on the types of issues you're talking about. We're always going to have international trade, and we want it to be strong, we want it to be resilient, we want it to be with countries that agree with us and are going to play by rules. So I think there's room to talk about how to take those kinds of actions and initiatives.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cornyn.